welcome back to my recount of my epic August 2018 journey through Japan. So we are at day 2. So my goal for this video is twofold. One is to, of course, entertain and amuse. The other is to give you some ideas to help you plan for your own food itinerary, such that when the pandemic ends and the lockdown is lifted, you can spring into action and get on the first airplane to your dream destination. I got up really early before most of the city was awake, and walked around the neighborhood, which was very, very quiet early in the morning, and very few cars. So the Yokohama football stadium or soccer stadium was nearby. Walked around a bit and then stopped at a Family Mart. So Family Mart is one of 4 or 5 national convenience store chains in Japan, along with 7-Eleven and Lawson's and some other ones. So they primarily serve food, and most of the food is actually freshly supplied in the morning. So at Family Mart, I got one of those onigiri. It's a rice ball wrapped in seaweed, and there's a little bit of spicy tuna in the center. So it was it tasted pretty fresh. I mean, it was like $1.25. Nothing to write home about, but it did provide me with sufficient fuel to sally forth and explore the neighborhood. So after my scheme of walking around the neighborhood, I went back to the hotel, freshen up, and then started my day in earnest. My first stop was at the Ichiran Ramen shop. So I got there, I think it was around 9 a.m. and the place was pretty much empty, except one other person, probably a holiday maker as well. After going up a steep flight of stairs, I was met with a team of vending machines. Now, the most fast food restaurants in Japan use vending machines. So you just drop the right amount of coins into the machine, and you get a receipt, which you give to the chef, thereby cutting out the middleman. And then you come to a line of cubicles, and there's actually like a lit grid plan outside that shows which cubicles are available, and you just make your way there yourself. And on the table before you sits basically a selection sheet from which you can select the width of the ramen, the width of the noodle, any additional toppings, any side items you want. So basically everything about Ichiran Ramen is customizable. So you make your preferences known, and then after you're ready, you can ring for the wait staff to come over, who will retract the curtain, take the form from you, and then give you a bow from behind the curtain. So what was weird about this whole transaction was that the curtain only retracted up so much, such that only the midriff of the waiter was visible to you. So you're basically talking to someone's midriff throughout this whole interaction. A few minutes later, came back with a bowl of steaming hot ramen. So now let's get to the meat of this meal. For $10, you get a pretty good portion, and it's definitely filling. So the ramen came with their house special hot sauce. which you can also request to skip. So regarding the noodles themselves, they weren't really, I was not that impressed by the noodles, to be honest. The noodles, I think they were manufactured by machines and not by hand, and you could tell because the noodles were uniform in width and pretty much uniform in texture as well. I like my noodles al dente, and these noodles were a little on the soggy side. The soup was really that's really the main show, and it was definitely satisfying. Very really rich tonkotsu pork bone broth, very strong umami flavor. Sometimes ramen soup can get a little too salty. In this case, I think they put just enough salt in there, and it really just enough to bring out the flavor of the bone broth and the other things that they put in there, chicken head or beef ribs or whatever. So it really made the other flavors more pronounced without calling too much attention to itself. So it was really well made, and the spicy red sauce, simply took all of that to the next level. The other toppings were all quite typical and predictable, and nothing special or worth writing home about. But all in all, I think it was a good experience. I would go back, but I would say if you're in the neighborhood, it's worth taking a detour for, to borrow a phrase from the Michelin Guide. But I personally would not go out of my way or wait for an hour to experience it. When it comes to Ichiran, the environment is part and parcel to that whole experience, because it's really quite unique. You're sitting in a cubicle surrounded on two sides by wooden boards and then a bamboo curtain in front. So you can somewhat eat in privacy and slurp with abandon. Maybe it is because of that this offer respite from the hustle and bustle of big city life that really draws people and sets Ichiran apart. But I appreciated the environment and the privacy, or the semblance of privacy. But it did not prepare me for what happened next. So after the meal, I hopped over to their bathroom, and as soon as I entered, I was confronted with an army of toilet rolls. It was comical in its own way. I guess it's the owner's way of saying, we've got you covered. So it was a good start to a big day, and I was off to my next destination. There's an area in Yokohama called Minato Mirai, and so it's a mixed-use commercial area, part office space, part shopping center, and it's a pretty big area right on the or next to the dock. So in that general area, there's a building called the Landmark Building, and it is the tallest in Yokohama. But there is a famous observation deck atop the tower, and that's where I went to next. So pretty soon I was on top of the building with the entirety of Yokohama laid before me. You can get a 360-degree view of Yokohama, the Minato Mirai area, the dock, the cruise lines, the skyscrapers, and on a clear day you can also see Mount Fuji. So I would say it's a good experience and worth checking out if you're into skylines. However, because it was during the summer and there was a lot of evaporation, so not surprisingly, Mount Fuji was cloaked in a thick layer of cloud. The highlight of my visit to the Landmark Tower was not the view, but the soft serve that I had in the observation deck cafe. So the soft serve was called Cremia or Cremia, and it was simply the best soft serve I have ever had in my life. It was incredible. Rarely do I ever give 10 out of 10 for anything, but this was a 10 out of 10. So the soft serve was perfectly frozen, such that there was absolutely no icicles. It was as smooth as silk. The uniformity of the texture was clinical, and it was definitely more expensive than your regular soft serve, one that you would get at 7-Eleven, but it was definitely worth it. And if you get a chance, jump on it.